Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers for a World in Crisis, from the words of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Fear, Part 3, from the Mother. This fear comes from weakness of nerves and of the vital. This fear must be got rid of before any attempt is made to follow the path of yoga. Yoga and fear do not go together. You are frightened because your breathing seems to stop when you try to concentrate. Don't enter this path if you are so full of fears. Suppose it comes to the worst, then what will happen? You may die. And then? What great harm will be done if you are dead? Our yoga is not for cowards. If you have no courage, better leave it. Your fears will bring disaster. What can he fear who belongs to the divine? Can he not walk, his soul expanding and his brow illumined upon the path the divine traces for him? Whatever it may be, even if it is altogether incomprehensible to his limited reason? All fear must be overcome and replaced by a total confidence in the divine grace. I have been told, and this was one of the teachings of a very old tradition, that it was the influence of the adverse forces upon earth that had created fear, for it was their way of acting on human beings. But animals also feel fear. So that takes away a little from the strength of the argument. For I don't think the adverse beings have any special interest in creating fear for animals. Fear is a phenomenon of unconsciousness. It is a kind of anguish that comes from ignorance. One does not know the nature of a certain thing, does not know its effect or what will happen, does not know the consequences of one's acts. One does not know so many things. And this ignorance brings fear. One fears what one does not know. Take a child. If it is brought before someone it does not know, I am not speaking of a child with an awakened inner consciousness. I am speaking of an ordinary child. You bring it before someone it does not know. Its first movement will always be one of fear. Only very rare children, and they have another consciousness, are very bold. It may also be a mixture of apprehension, a kind of instinct. When one instinctively feels that something is dangerous and hasn't the means to remedy it, when one does not know what to do to protect himself from it, then he is afraid. There are, I believe, countless reasons for fear, but it is a movement of unconsciousness in every case. That which knows has no fear. That which is perfectly awake which is fully conscious and which knows, has no fear. It is always something dark that is afraid. One of the great remedies for conquering fear is to face boldly what one fears. You are put face to face with the danger you fear, and you fear it no longer. The fear disappears. From the yogic point of view, the point of view of discipline, this is the cure recommended. In the ancient traditions, especially in Egypt, in order to practice occultism, as I was telling you last time, it was necessary to abolish the fear of death completely. Well, one of the practices of those days was to lay the neophyte in a sarcophagus and leave him in there for a few days, as though he were dead. Naturally, he was not left to die, neither of hunger nor suffocation, but still he remained lying there as though he were dead. It seems that cures you of all fear. When fear comes, if one succeeds in putting upon it consciousness, knowledge, force, light, one can cure it altogether. There is indeed the Christian religion, which says that fear comes of our having eaten the apple in the Garden of Eden, that with knowledge came fear. And upon earth, it is always this fear which governs all life for all human beings. Only here again, I repeat my argument that animals also have fear. Animals have not sinned, haven't eaten the apple, so they shouldn't have any fear. It is a half-consciousness mixed with a sort of ignorant instinct, which stresses a danger, and at the same time does not know its remedy. But certainly the fact is that the adverse beings of the vital world, who fight against the divine work, make an extensive use of fear. It is through that they have the strongest hold on human beings. Besides, they are not the only ones. There are also all the political and religious means which are of that type. There are religions which found their power over the believers simply through the fear of death and of what will happen thereafter, and of all catastrophes which await you after death if you do not obey blindly the laws they dictate to you. This fear may also come from an antipathy, that is, a lack of affinity with something. Some people are especially afraid of fire. Some especially fear water. Others have a special fear of one animal or another. It comes from a disharmony between the vital vibrations. And then it is translated in this body unconsciousness by fear. The body is a terribly unconscious thing. How one has to work to give it just a very little consciousness. It lives automatically, by habit. It is terribly unconscious. Namaste.